Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, tonight's video is a recap of our AD&D First Edition Greyhawk campaign. So if you've been following along, you know that this is a Season 2, Session 5, or our 20th week of play session. So it's really amazing that we've put together this 5 month long campaign, still going strong. Most of the player party was present today. We had two absences, one because he's on vacation and another because he's kind of under the weather and hopefully he gets well soon. We have the return of the group's paladin today. He was moving, so he missed 2 weeks, so he's back on. But for the most part, this group has been going strong since week 4. So for 4 of the members that came on in week 4, they have been here without fail for 16 sessions. And then I have a core group of 5 players, but now they're all part of the core. Those 5 players have been here from day one. So they've been here all 20 weeks, every single week, every single Monday night, with 2 exceptions when we played on Tuesdays, I believe, and or maybe even one day on like a Friday or something. But we have been very, very consistent, and it's something that it's something that's been the real pull factor for this campaign, and that's been expressed by my players. That the real special thing about this is the consistency that whether it be myself or just the group in general has been able to maintain over the past 5 months. So looking forward to the next 5 months and so on and so on. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into the recap. Now, this recap has taken up actually 6, well, fairly large font, but still 6 pages of writing to cover this recap. And during some portions of it, I will, just because I try to be a little bit more focused in the recap, and to be quite honest with you, in some cases, like when they were having conversations at the table, I forgot which characters were saying what, at certain times. So it'll be just a very generic, and the party said, and go from there. And hopefully my players will come on and remind me, oh no, that was me. And we sort that out. One of the pitfalls of having 7 players, and in a very social setting, as you'll see that we were in here, it kind of makes sense that there's a little bit of chaotic talking back and forth and such. So without further ado, let's jump in and see. So I'm going to show you really quickly. So this was the group that came in last night. So Amalric, our elven fighter magic user, Angus, who is now a fighter. Angus was previously a ranger for the first 16 weeks or so, and Angus, who's played by Kelly, he told me that, this was his first time playing a ranger, and he really wants to play a bard, and so he's willing to shift over and basically gave up his rangerdom to become a straight up fighter. Right now he will carry that to, I think, roughly level 7, and then he'll switch over to thief. Has to work up to level 7 as a thief, and then at which point he will then become a first level bard. So really looking forward to that progression, and he is definitely dedicating it for the long haul and playing the character the way that he wants, and that's really, really impressive, and I'm happy to allow him to do so, and I'm glad that he's really taking that risk. Then we have Breeze. Breeze is our elven cleric. We have Cedric, our magic user, human magic user. We have Candrius, who has returned, as I said, this episode, and he is our human paladin. We have Mirador, our human cleric, and we have Sparrow, the only woman in our group. We have Sparrow, who is a half-elf druid. So really looking forward to get into this recap, and I will switch views once again. So, excuse me. So now we go to season 2, session 5, week 20. So the adventure party, after spending a few days in Lothwick is the capital city of Yeomanry. They finally decided to depart the capital city and return to their investigation to thwart the evil plans of the Dark Druided Enclave. So if you saw in the last episode, the characters started to learn several things from speaking to a liaison of the Grand Druid of this particular region, and clerics of Bokab, and they got kind of a mixed message from the two different factions that they're dealing with here. But one thing was made clear, that they're going to be pretty much on their own to go back down south and to either pursue their own investigation and try to put a stop to whatever's going on with this Dark Druidic Enclave, and also to find out some of the unknowns that they're still, being tied up with. They still didn't know, and still don't know, actually, even after this past session, what truly happened to Zelagar, the Archmage, or Rogan, the Fighter Lord. What role they actually played in a lot of what was going on back in the time. And one thing that they need to be reminded with, because I know it didn't really come up again, was that the last time these two individuals was seen was about 20 years ago. And some of the events that they were taking part in, both Rogan and Zelagar, might even go back as far as 30 years ago. So some of the things that some of the trails of investigation that they're looking to follow are somewhat cold. And so that's just something that I want them, because I know that they typically watch this, just to bear in mind that, you are following some trails that are between 20 and 30 years old. And so all of that information is not going to come to you crystal clear. You'll have fragments, and sometimes the fragments won't piece together, and you may become delayed, or you may get run off on a stray or tangent, and that's perfectly fine, because because the world will keep on moving forward, and other things may arise, and I want you to feel free to kind of follow whatever path you feel is best for you to move in, because I'm confident that you have, as a party, you have bought into the idea that you're pursuing important things to be taken care of, and that your group is standing out as being, a group of 9 adventurers traveling is really a spectacle to behold. And I know you don't always feel that way, and I do that on purpose, with certain NPCs, but they don't always know of you or whatever, but that reputation is going to continue to grow as you go along. So, without further ado, let's get beyond the first paragraph. And although they had gained some valuable information, it was information that put them less at ease rather than comforting them. The party now realizes that they are aligned against a greater evil than they had anticipated, and they still have many unanswered questions. They departed Loftwick, leaving the fighter Ennis behind. The elder fighter seemed to be trying to shake off an illness he could not. So the companions decided to part ways. The road to Whitehurst was long, well traveled by caravans and patrols, and uneventful for the 3-day trip it took to complete their journey. So they're traveling from Loftwick to Whitehurst. Whitehurst is a fairly large town, and as I described, it's a well-traveled road to get there, and it was uneventful for them. Their arrival to the large town came on the 3rd day at morning. The gates of the town were wide open, yet guarded, and caravans and lone travelers passed through with just a moment's checking by the guards. The party was paused for a moment. They were asked the obligatory and lazy question, "What business do you have here?" At which they responded with an equally vague and lazy, "Just passing through." Remarkably, the guards let the party pass with no further delay. However, the guards were spotted giving one another a curious glance. So yeah, as the party were just passed through, and I believe it was Angus who answered the questions. As they were passing through, Angus caught, or one of the party members caught the guards kind of look at each other, and like a almost like a knowing nod or something, and then just went right back to their regular business. So it set a small seed into the player's mind, and that's what I was looking to do. At this point, one of the party members asked the guard for a place of lodging and food, and the Inn of the Long Road was the response given. The Inn of the Long Road, as they approached it, they saw this fairly large building, and I described it as there was the tavern and then there was the inn. The inn was kind of a separate structure, 2 stories with doors along the 2 sides of it. There's an alleyway that runs down either side of the building, and there was horse posts up and around the opposite side of the inn, and so all of the players are riding their horses. They're either medium horses or in some cases medium war horses. If I recall, the paladin has a medium war horse, as well as potentially, I forget if it was a Malric or Mirador, has a medium war horse. Possibly a Malric has a medium war horse. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. So, the Inn of the Long Road, the party is greeted by a mid-teenaged boy at the bar. Angus, the former ranger and now a fighter, addresses the boy and introduces the party as the Keepers of Questcatan. So, yeah, and it was a big laugh because everybody started laughing. Like, he was like, "We are the Keepers of Questcatan," and the lad just gives him like a blank stare and like a whatever dismissal. Still continuing to clean the glass that he's holding on to, and the boy was just very dismissive of it. So, "Oh, okay, whatever you say." And then Angus asked to speak to the tavern keeper because they needed to secure lodging for this evening, and they were hungry. They were looking for some food. So the boy tells him, "Yeah, sure, I'll go get my father. He owns the establishment." And a few minutes later, the owner, arrives. He greets the party and attends to their needs. Angus had shown the man their seal from the magistrate of Westburn, of which the owner looked with some interest at. All right, so they showed him that, hey, we have this, this documentation, this amulet that shows that we've been given the seal of of Westburn, and Westburn is an important town, and so therefore the magistrate is an important individual in the overall yeomanry governmental apparatus. Angus asked of the choices of the inn's fare, and an order was placed for a full spit roasted pig, dozens upon dozens of eggs, and the house mead, which was a light berry infused mead that was perfect pairing with the ham and the eggs. So, yeah, they wanted to know something about the food that is well known in this particular area, or perhaps even a house special, and that is what the owner told them, the house special. Now, the owner, of course, introduced himself. All right, and he introduced himself as, and I just have to get the right page here. He introduced himself as Andrus Pellegrin. All right, so human, and seemed like an affable kind of fellow. Very very busy though. So he kind of like rushed them through. He said they could set up a table, and that's where we get to the next set. So meanwhile, Candrius, the paladin, asked one of the serving boys if the boy could put two tables together for the party of 7. The boy responded to the paladin, "You seem big and strong enough to do it yourself." At which point the boy walked away, and Candrius did so, a bit perplexed at the boy's kind of terse response. So yeah, so they noticed at this point that there seems to be like 6 boys working in the general area of this main room, and there's about 25 patrons at this mid-morning breakfast, or somewhere in between breakfast and lunch. Some of the characters were actually calling it brunch, and all of the boys, they noticed had a familial look about them. So they kind of assumed that, all right, well, this is a family-run business. That's when Breeze actually asked the owner very briefly, where are do you have any daughters working here? And the man really didn't like respond, or even possibly didn't dignify the kind of question. But the characters were just like like a face palm, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, and he hasn't even started drinking his elven wine yet. So so Candrius sets up the table, and the group finally sits down. So the room was abuzz. Besides the 6 serving boys, and all of whom shared the familiar resemblance, and about 25 patrons, the room was occupied predominantly by humans, with the exception of the party's 2 elves, half-elf and halfling. However, off to one corner, sitting together, sat 2 dwarves. Striding across the room and settling at the bar was another human at first glance, but after some staring, traits of non-human mixture could be seen. And the party quickly, realized, and I believe it was, Angus once again, the former ranger, who says, he basically provided that he's probably a half orc. All right, now they're kind of aware of the rarity within Yeomanry's population of both half elves and half orcs. They're fairly uncommon to be seen, or even very close to rare to be seen in this region. So the fact that they're seeing a half elf in their own group, and seeing a half orc just wandering about, they are typically adventurers. All right, so that's one thing, and I don't think the players really made that connection at the time, but that's where we're moving along with anyway. So he was believed to be a half orc, and immediately aroused suspicion. All right, at one point the paladin had said, make sure that you keep you keep an eye on your purses. it's an interesting thing because you start to see some of the stereotypes that the player characters are holding about certain groups of individuals that they're encountering, and that's kind of the very thing that they're looking to face as well, and stop. So it was interesting to hear it. It was interesting to hear the players mention that, and to have these preconceived notions that we'll start to see as that develops as well as we go on. So Angus ordered up 2 mugs of ale and approached the dwarves. Cedric, the least charismatic and self-aware member of the party, approached the half-orc. So yeah, here goes two party members, and they're walking over. Angus is going over to the dwarves with 2 mugs of ale, and Cedric got really excited. He wanted to go see what this half-orc was all about. And so as he walks off, some of the other characters at the table started commenting like they didn't know what Angus was really doing, but it was actually said, "Oh, sure, the least charismatic of us is going to approach, the half orc," and so they were certainly keeping an eye on what was going to happen there because they were suspecting that something bad could happen, and so they wanted to keep their eye on the magic user. Then it was actually proffered the idea that, well, maybe his low charisma will aid him in dealing with a half orc, which they also assumed had low charisma, and so maybe they wouldn't clash as much. Again, another potential stereotype had come up. So the rest of the party quietly watched, expecting Cedric to fail in whatever he was planning on doing, and no conjecture was made on the part of Angus. They really didn't know what he was going over there for. Surprisingly, Cedric was more successful in his conversation, whereas Angus walked away with little information besides the dwarves' names and which caravan route they were likely to be headed in. So, so the 2 dwarves, their names were Gruff and Grum. So Gruff was the younger of the 2 dwarves, and Grum was the older, obviously. And Grum is slightly larger, so more, looks more stout, and certainly armored, differently than Gruff was. All right, so Gruff was wearing simple leather armor, and both had hand axes, but Grum was certainly wearing chainmail of some kind, and underneath his cloak and such. So that was a detail that the party really didn't pick up on, was that they knew that these 2, and they knew that the half orc were armed because they can kind of see their weapons on them, but they didn't go into very much detail as to what exactly were they wearing to that extent. Sparrow, the half-elf druid, cast a detect magic spell and swept or scanned the room with it. So, so that was at this point, as they, as both Cedric and Angus returned to the table. That's when she decided, I'm going to cast a detect magic spell, and I'm just going to sweep it through the room and see if you got any hits. And she did, in fact, get some hits on it. Let's see. So, well, let's see how this goes. I'm sorry. So this is page 1 and 2. I should have numbered these things. So, other than her own party, that's where it is. Other than her own party, the larger and older dwarf and the half-orc both emitted a magic aura. Clearly both had magic items, perhaps rings or armor or concealed weapons. As the party began to wrap up their breakfast, they took stock of what they had learned. So this is what they have learned so far: that the tavern owner is Andres Pellegrin, a human. His brother Roland is his partner. Later on, when they established their rooms and they got settled into their rooms, they would learn that Andres's wife, the name is Estelle, runs the inn operation of the business. The serving boys were a mix of both brothers and potentially cousins, and some of the housemaids also had that familial appearance too. So definitely a family-run business. The dwarves, Gruff the younger and Grum the older, are adventurers. They admitted at least that, and they're treasure seekers. They had stated that they were heading out west towards Fort Cerdine, and that was all of the information that that Angus had gotten from the dwarves. The half orc named Almuk is a self-proclaimed sellsword by profession, likely a fighter of undetermined or revealed experience, and not a citizen of Yeomanry, which was something that Cedric really took an interest in, because Cedric is not of Yeomanry either. He's from Valuna, and so he was kind of asking the half orc some pretty probing questions, and the half orc didn't seem to be too thrilled to answer. And simply just left it as um, I never served in the Yeomanry military, and so therefore I am not a citizen. He doesn't have the right to vote, which was what Cedric was actually asking him about. So then the party finishes eating their breakfast and they go off into the street looking to make some contact with some caravans, because they want to travel, further south and then start heading towards the caves of chaos, and that seems to be their goal throughout this, is that we're just going to head down, take a different route than we did before, because we want to hit some of these towns along the way, and eventually get to the caves of chaos to deal with them. So the party during the mid-afternoon began searching for a caravan to ride along with. Although they sought one traveling to the south, however, the 6 caravans that they did discover, none were heading in that direction. 2 were heading towards the Fort Cerdine, and the other 4 were heading back to Lothwick. So one of the party members once again stated, it was like, listen, there's 7 of us. We're a caravan on ourselves. We don't need to attach ourselves to a caravan, in order to travel. And so they decided to go in, and by now it was late afternoon, and they were looking to to catch a bath and to make sure that the room accommodations that they were staying in were all suitable, and then they would go down for dinner a bit later. So dinner time at the tavern. The tavern was even more crowded at dinner time, with over 50 patrons, and clearly some entertainment was present that night. So yeah, they saw that there was like an assistant to the musician going from table to table to table and taking some kind of requests, they believe, and then he would run over and speak to the musician who had an instrument. I described it as a lute, and he would start singing whatever little songs or ballads or whatever, and just the back and forth. So the party was actually quite kind of excited about this, and we're like, oh, I hope he comes to our table. And as they start to realize that he certainly was making his way towards there. So once again, the party scanned the assemblage of this packed room, and once again the 2 dwarves and the half orc were present. Angus got up again, approached the dwarves, and he invited them to come to his table. As did Cedric, walk up to the orc and also invited him to come to their table. So during the entertainment, the party was approached by the assistant to the musician and asked what tale or ballad they would like the bard to sing. The dwarves asked to hear the ballad of an ancient copper dragon, Aeolus, and her lost wormlings. The party's interest was immediately sparked, and Cedric, the magic user, asked that the musician sing the ballad of Zelagar and Rogan. All right. The reason why the players were, I should say the characters became very excited because that was one of their other questions about Zelagar and Rogan, and that was, where did the copper dragon skin come from, and what were the circumstances that Rogan returned with that copper dragon skin, and their fears were that Zelagar and Rogan were not on the up and up, that they were very shady or even potentially evil, because of some of the mixed messages that they got as they were going through Quescaton and seeing in their trophy rooms certain things that that genuinely good people would not have in their possession. So when Cedric had asked to hear a ballad of Zelagar and Rogan immediately following the story of the Copper Dragon, they were hoping that the combined up of the two stories, which is exactly what happened, would give them some insight. So to the party's pleasure, the musician put the two stories together, and one of their mysteries was resolved, and the dwarves opened up to the idea of traveling with the party. So once the dwarves understood that the player party had encountered the skin of a copper dragon, the dwarves expressed that that was in fact their plan all along, was to travel to the south and search for the copper dragon's lair. Now, upon hearing that there was the skin of the copper dragon, they assumed that the copper dragon must have been killed, and the ballad of Rogan that the bard had sung was that Rogan was either going to rescue the copper dragon or avenge the copper dragon's death. So it put Rogan in a positive light, considering that the player party knew that copper dragons are genuinely good creatures, and so the fact that Rogan was going to help in some way alleviated some of their possible misconceptions of Rogan and the kind of person that he was. So the dwarves shared that they had heard rumors of the dragon's lair was to the south of here, and on one of the two spurs of the mountain range that thrusts out from the main range. So there's a section in the on the map that shows these two prongs of mountains that jut out into the more open plains area, and those outcroppings, one of the two is where the dwarves had rumors that that's where this young dragon had made its lair. Almuk the Sellsword. After talking with the dwarves a bit, Cedric decided to talk to the half-orc once more. He believed that Almuk might consider traveling with the large party of adventurers. Nearly stumbling through his conversation, the low charisma of Cedric, he still managed to convince the half-orc to come to the table for a meal. And Almuk agreed. Yeah, at one point he's kind of trying to hire this half-orc, which is a trained fighter, to become like a man-at-arms, for Quescaton, and Almuk certainly took offense to that, but he kind of forgave it, and possibly because Cedric then invited him for a meal, to break fast with someone. is a great way to to break the ice between two unknown parties to one another. So so Almuk agreed and went and sat down. At one point during the meal, Sparrow decided to cast another detect magic spell, and again it picked up a hit on a young woman sitting across the room. She sat alone, at least apparently so. Angus began to walk over to her, but as he approached, another man came in and sat at the table. And so, so Angus was making his way towards her, and I guess, had the intention of sitting at her table or at least approaching her. But as this other man came in, Angus then just peeled off and went over towards the bar. But he walked. There was a half wall next to her, and then the bar was off on that side. And so as he walked past the half wall and over to the bar, he kind of glanced down at her, or he was trying to just catch what she and the gentleman were talking about. And he noticed out of the corner of his eye that that she had certainly looked over and followed his movement. All right, and then she looked back over to the man sitting at her table, trying to converse with her. And at this point, she just dismisses the guy away from her. Angus never heard what they were talking about, and her dismissal was seen by the rest of the party members. So they saw that she had done that. She then locked eyes, or at least looked at the table of adventurers there, and at that point she abruptly stood up and started walking out. And she had to pass by the character's table, the adventure party's table, in order to get out. And it was at that moment that that Candrius had done a no alignment check. So, and I'll get to that in a minute. So let's get back to where we left off here. So the woman whom he was primarily interested in, his power couldn't tell her alignment. His power couldn't tell her alignment. The man she spoke to, so Candria starts checking out all these individuals that kind of stood out. And when he tried to know her alignment, he couldn't. It didn't work. For whatever reason, but he assumed that she had some kind of a magic charm or something that blocked that, and so that of course made him suspicious. Then when he checked the others within the room, now Candrius has to actually be in close proximity, so he did rise from the table and he started walking about the room. And when he passed by the other companion that was at her table and did that quick check as well, that person, he detected he detected a sense that that person was not a good person, potentially chaotic, and probably evil of some kind. So he then decided to check everyone else, and certainly at their table there. So Gruff the Younger rang in as chaotic neutral to the paladin. His brother or cousin Grum was lawful neutral. A strange companionship probably leads to many arguments, but they appear to be kingfolk of some kind. So they're, and that was something that Candrius had actually said. He's like, "Oh, that's a strange, pairing up of." Andrus, the tavern owner, rang true as a neutral good, but much to the surprise of the paladin, so too did the half-orc. The half-orc actually resonated as being neutral good, and that really surprised the paladin, and the paladin actually started talking to Almuk now with a kind of a sense, at least I got the sense that there was a certain amount of respect gained just in that discovery, and in their talking and discussion, he learned that uh, Almuk just generally wants to do the right thing. He wants to do good by the people and help people out, and so that certainly did gain the paladin's respect. One of the party members asked Almuk, as all at the table were chattering, "Do you know that woman?" All right, and as I said, I forget who actually. It might have actually been Amalric at that time asked about the woman, and Almuk replied, "You mean Petrus? I know of her." He then went on to say, "She's a local." He was then asked, "The local thieves guild or thereabouts?" And Almuk kind of wryly responded, and chuckled a little bit. He says, "Yeah, the thieves guild or thereabouts." Several at the table whispered in conjecture, "An assassin," having read through Almuk's coy hint. So, yeah, at this point, the party kind of thought she's apparently an assassin. They believe that they're being followed, and but they've ultimately decided that they were going to travel down south with these three new companions. So they're going to be like a party of 12, I believe. If there's 12 or 13. So a fairly large party. And once again, one of the party members mentioned, yeah, we're definitely a caravan on our own now. We certainly don't need to travel with anyone. So that's when we brought it to a close. And I just wanted to say that this particular 3 hour session, and it was 3 hours of basically from start to finish of interaction with NPCs, interaction amongst the party, and it was exploration in that they were learning about certain tales around this particular region now, and tying up some loose ends of some of the lore surrounding both the Copper Dragons and Rogon and Zelagar, and it was the entire session was no inklings or thoughts about potential of combat, no no real desire for it either. They really did want to just learn about this new place that they were in, and then come up with a plan, or come up with just an idea of what their next step was going to be. So again, another really successful session, and once again, another session where you don't have to have combat in order to have a fun, because there were plenty of laughs to be had during the session, and just a lot of character development took place here, and it allowed me to at least begin to flesh out another location that they may eventually return to. And so as the party keeps on traveling around the different parts of Yeomanry, as they're pursuing whatever adventures that they can come across and look to deal with, it's allowing the world building to just take place kind of organically. As they choose to go someplace, then that's when I start to develop it. Now, the other thing I want to point out is, not only was this, you know, really focus on, the two pillars of exploration and NPC interaction, but it was also roughly 90% sandbox. I was creating as they were talking and as they were coming together, and I was starting to look for different ways to connect the various NPCs that they were encountering, and kind of building up a story solely based on some of the interactions that the characters were having with the NPCs, and that's when some of these ideas started coming into my mind. Um, Originally I was thinking of the two dwarves being kind of like the monster hunter, the monster hunters from Clash of the Titans, the second, the more modern version of Clash of the Titans, and that's kind of how I was picturing the two of them, and the uh, Petrus also came into my mind, after they had first entered the tavern and started going. That's when I kind of developed that idea to put kind of a shady character inside for the evening session, and I also didn't have planned the bard to sing those different ballads. That was also something that just came out as I got the piece. Well, the dwarves seeking the copper dragon treasure. That's where, how would I reveal that to the players, and that's where the idea of the ballad came from. So very organic, very sandboxy. um, I didn't do very much planning at all prior to this, other than just thinking about, well, what directions do I think the player party is going to look to go into. And so, again, it was another, really fun for me. I hope fun for them. I'm sure it probably was. And, just looking forward to our next session next Monday. So, once again, thanks for joining. I'm going to switch views finally and get back to here. So I hope you liked this episode. Please give it a thumbs up if you have. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comment section. If you hadn't subscribed, please consider subscribing. If you have any direct questions that you'd like to put to my players, feel free to put them in the comment section, and then I'll let them know that you placed a question directly to any of them. So I will wrap up and let you just take a look at the player party once again. So we have Almeric, the elven fighter magic user; Angus, the now fighter; Breeze, the elven cleric; Cedric, the magic user, human magic user; Candrius, the human paladin; Mirador, the human cleric, cleric of Farlagon, by the way; and Breeze, I always forget the name of his deity. Um, she's an elven deity, obviously, that allows her clergy to use bows, long bows; and Sparrow, our half elf druid. So if you have any questions for any of them, please just direct them in the comment section. Direct them towards the player characters here. And I will finally switch back here. Oh, I hope that did worked right. Let me come back over here. There we go. Sorry, clicking back and forth kind of messes things up. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this episode. I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. You'll have a great afternoon or evening, and look forward to seeing you on the weekend. Hopefully I get another game going on this weekend. Have a great time.